Hey everybody, this is Perch. I'm going to read this mail here. It says, "Dear Perch, how are you? Hoping you or family are well. By the way, I appreciate those of you who ask about my family. Every now and then my daughters show up in my videos. It's been a very long time. Probably should do it again. For some of you who've been listening to this channel since the beginning, you've kind of watched my girls grow up in some of this. And by the way, if you go to, it's a video is pinned to this channel, the How to Make Comics video, which forever is going to be one of my favorite videos. I've done interviews with amazing people I've looked up to, people who are legends. I mean, the ability to talk to like Howard Chaykin is just incredible to me. The interview with Rachel Pollack, who's unfortunately now passed away, is kind of a memorial. I mean, you're talking to somebody who is again a legend. At least for me, whether she is for you or not, or any of these people are for you or not, is different. But the video I do love most is that How to Make Comics, and it's again pinned to my channel, and it's a riff. It was an April Fool's joke, going against the How to Basic. If you don't know that channel, Ben Templesmith actually introduced me to it, and How to Basic is a pretty ridiculous YouTube channel. You can go down the rabbit hole watching that. It got weirder and less pleasant, but anyway, so I do that. But if you look at that video closely, you get a brief, very brief video glimpse of my daughters, which is probably the closest to a face reveal that we're going to get for a while. But anyway, thank you for asking about the mail, I guess. Let's get back to the mail. It says, "I've heard the weather down there can be a little rough. Texas? Yeah, yes. I recently was visiting Scottsdale, Arizona. And to give you a sense of how much I enjoyed it, it was 114, and the airport was closing during the afternoon because it was too hot to have planes take off, to give you a sense of how great it was to be there. Anyway, I mean, good for some people, not for me. So it's back to me. It says, so on to the topic. My question to you is, why do comics and even some forms of entertainment in the U.S. seem to have such a low regard toward canon and or lore? Does this happen in Japan? For example, One Piece, or Full Metal Jacket. Full Metal Jacket? Full Metal Alchemist, you mean? Full Metal Jacket's a very different thing. You mean Full Metal Alchemist. Korea, Europe, South America, Australia. Why does this seem to happen only here in the U.S.? That's Bill. So I'll give you my view on it. I think that there is a long-standing disregard or opinion that comic books are lesser in general. Forget about continuity or lore. There's just this general feeling that that type of entertainment, be it comic books, graphic novels, or quite frankly, I'll go into this more later, even books, just books, that books or comic books are for nerds. And the idea of, accurately, honestly transcribing what's going on in those comics into a movie format is absurd, because you're basically taking something for nerds and dopes, and you're translating that into a more popular medium, i.e. movies. That's the viewpoint of people. It's definitely not my viewpoint. And I've said this before, and I've long since believed that, like, comic books are best if they're properly, translated, just panel for panel. They do better. And I think the argument there is, like, comic books, there's a proven track record where they grab people's attention and imagination. And for many people, seeing that live on the big screen would be exciting. You get to see kind of the moments between those panels. You see how they sew together, connect together. And I think that would be exciting. For people who are not into comics, they don't know the difference either way. So what does it matter? I mean, the comic book as a storytelling method, I think, is powerful. Sequential art is like a storyboard for a movie. So there's nothing wrong with it. But for whatever reason, in the US, there's a stigma against comics. And I think attached to it becomes continuity, lore, everything else, because there's been tons of movie projects. And, I think I'm going to be talking to Mark Miller soon, and hopefully we'll get to do an interview. And I want to ask him, I'll probably forget, that, you, in translating the comics to the movies, do you sit in a room and try and figure out ways to not have the movie or sorry, the comic translated? Do you go, well, we can't possibly translate it direct. We're going to have to insert some extra scenes. And why? Why would you do that? I think Mark would be an interesting person to ask that to, because he's in theory, he's very much with his Netflix deal kind of in the center of all this. But if you go outside the US, if you go to Europe, you go to Japan, and we'll start with Japan, and we can get other places because they're all very similar. Typically, the mission and the art is to aggressively maintain artistic integrity, continuity, lore, everything else. You definitely want to keep everything intact. And you view this with One Piece. You view this with My Hero Academia. There's lots of art. If you read the manga, what you'll discover is that the manga it feels like a movie adaptation. If you watch the anime first and then you go back and read the manga, you read it and you're like, God damn it. I've had people who've said this to me before. Like, I was expecting there to be more in the manga. I was expecting there to be like more details or more story or more stuff that didn't get translated into the anime. And the answer is nope. It's shot for shot what's in the manga. And I think that's correct. That's how it should be. When you're doing live action, that can be tough. But if you're doing animation, I mean, look, I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. I do not fucking understand on any level why people don't take really, really popular comic books and then just shot for shot animate them. Why wouldn't you do that? It's cheaper. It's easier. Literally, you give the Dark Phoenix saga to a Korean animation studio, and you're like, give me a movie that's just this, and just put it together, and you could do it. Even for a long time, I would ask this, and people say, well, the thought bubbles would never translate. Yeah, but they do. Again, look at My Hero Academia. The thought bubbles are being translated there as thoughts. They have the character looking serious, and then they have the voiceover happening there with a slight audio filter, so it's clear it's the guy's thoughts instead of his words, and it works. That is clearly a better plan, but there is a embarrassment or a stigma. So I guess I'm not answering enough of your question. I first of all acknowledging that I agree this is something we see, but beyond that, the only thing I think of is that in the US, fairly early, comic books got kind of degraded as funny books, or comics with an X, or like, hey kids, it's stupid shit for you, basically, is how it got billed and advertised. And it wasn't ever really the case. Kids clearly read comic books, no doubt about that, but adults did too. There was a little bit of a stigma that if adults were reading comic books out in public, or even in, say, high school, you were geeky, you were a nerd, you probably got bullied and whatever else maybe. I don't think it was severe as people sometimes claimed. I think, I don't know if it was Stephanie Phillips or Vita Ayala. Somebody said like, oh yeah, I used to get beat up for reading comics in school. And I'm going to say bullshit to that. I don't agree. I went to school in the 80s, and I read comics. I definitely had some people call me a nerd. I also wound up, even though I got into later in high school, I played on the football team. So it was tough to call somebody who was on the football team, and we were triple. It was tough to call somebody like that a nerd, but people did it because I read comics, and that was clearly, I like to doodle and draw and other things. And so, you're on the long bus ride going to, some school that you're going to play against. And, I had a little sketchbook and I'd draw. That's what I would do. Anyway, I think that's been part of American culture, because you go other places in the world, and I haven't really ever encountered this, where comic books had such a stigma of being a nerd kind of geek hobby, and it was looked down upon. I haven't seen this anywhere else but the US. But my feeling is that is part of kind of American culture, or at least it was. And even today in 2024, we have graphic novels, and we got, the MCU, and we got all this stuff. It still is considered somehow a little nerdy. And I'll test this for yourself. If you go to your work or wherever you are, and you say, yeah, my favorite films are the MCU, people would be like, that's nice. I mean, yeah, those are exciting movies, but there's something lesser about them. even though they made lots of money, even though there's a big budget, even though, for some of these films, there's a, really kind of thoughtful, in-depth plot, they're considered lesser. And that, I think, is the reason why when comic books are being adapted or when they're looking to take them beyond comics, people are like, well, we got to completely change the story. We can't stick to continuity because that continuity is for nerds. We're going to have to, elevate it somehow. We're going to have to, make it a real product. We're going to have to, bring it to the big stage, the big screen. All these kind of words. For example, by the way, in Japan, when you talk about, moving a manga to anime or manga to OVA or something on the big screen, a movie that's coming out, for example, they won't describe it that way. They won't say, yeah, we're adapting this for the big screen. They're saying we're faithfully adapting it. There's a difference there in wording, and it's just kind of how it's baked into the culture. But to me, I think it's an embarrassment that goes on. I think it's people who are feeling bad about comics being somehow lesser. Why they think that, I have no idea, other than just historical, cultural bias. But if you want to take it to a deeper level, if you want to go to what's going to help comics be successful in the U.S., well, one of those things is don't feed that narrative. So if you're a comic creator, and it bugs me, Eric Larson will do this. He'll call them funny books, and he'll call them comics with an X, and he'll talk about like, I'm putting out a funny book, and I think, it, to me, and this is a personal opinion, can be shared by none of you, that's kind of you degrading your own, medium. And maybe you like the term, whatever, but to a lot of the audience, it just comes across as lesser. You're basically taking the thing you work in and you're downgrading it to being lesser. That's what I think. So even, running a comic shop, I would call them, we have comic books. I would sometimes call them comics. I would never call them funny books. I would never call them, comics with an X. I never try and do things silly. It was like, these are comic books. I also, by the way, I don't think you need to call them graphic novels to elevate them. I just think you need to own it. These are comic books. They're legitimate, storytelling, sequential art. They can be powerful. And so I don't have any shame or any fear about that. I will give comics to my kids. And my younger daughter in particular loves YA graphic novels, and she reads as many of them as she can. And, another parent is like, oh, are you okay letting your kid just read comics? Don't you think they should read serious books for a change? And I'm like, oh yeah, I just bought this is a real story. This parent's like being a, judgmental Karen on this thing. Do you think it's okay that they're reading comic books? Don't you think they should grow up into real books? I mean, she's 11 now. Don't you think she should, like real books? I'm like, yeah, for sure. I actually, I just bought 50 Shades of Grey, and, she's going to start reading that tonight. And the parents like look at me like, isn't that the sex book? I'm like, yeah, we want to give her something more grown up, right? That's what you're saying, that I need to give her grown up books to be more serious. So yeah, 50 Shades of Grey, and then the one with the twinkly gay vampire, that we're going to do that one next. And yeah. That's what you mean. That's what you mean, right? That's what we're going to do. That's what being a good parent is all about, you fucking bitch. Anyway, I didn't say the last part, but anyway, yeah. I don't think you need to be over serious about things, but take comics seriously. Why wouldn't you? Particularly if you're in the business. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? This is your money. This is where the cash is coming from. This is your profession. Why wouldn't you take it seriously? I mean, that's just stupid not to. Anyway, thank you very much for the mail. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that kind of jazz. Yeah, this channel will end with someday, but for now, get in on it. Tell your friends. Call them a little bitch if they don't listen to the channel. Thanks for listening. And the secret word is parakeet.